I remember Star Wars being the most hyped and beloved thing of all time, and now I feel like we're at a point where even hardcore Star Wars fans don't really even like Star Wars that much anymore. There was a point in time when Marvel and the MCU would only dream to reach the levels that Star Wars hype in the movies and TV shows and just overall culture had. I remember when the Star Wars sequels got announced and it was the biggest deal ever. Everyone was freaking out, especially when The Force Awakens came out. The hype for that movie was crazy. I remember a lot of people loving that movie and being super freaking excited to see what happens next, especially after that ending with Kylo Ren and Rey in the snow. Honestly, it was a good movie and everything was looking up and up for Star Wars, but at some point it took a complete nosedive. Even though we got more Star Wars content than ever with shows, series, games, new movies coming out, it just feels like Star Wars is dying, and if not, then it's already dead. But how? How did this happen? When did it happen? What was the exact moment that completely destroyed Star Wars? Well, that's exactly what we're gonna figure out. It's 1971 and George Lucas wants to make a remake of a Flash Gordon cereal. Now when I say that, you're probably thinking about a beautiful bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch or Lucky Charms, but no, I'm not talking about that kind of cereal. A cereal back in the day, specifically the Flash Gordon one in 1936, was a movie presented in chapters. Kind of like how we binge shows now with streaming and there's episodes and seasons and cliffhangers like that, but in theaters. And this one had 13 chapters, so you had to go to the movie theaters 13 times to see where the story goes and how the story ends. But all that doesn't even matter because George Lucas got shut down and he couldn't make this remake, so he decided to make his own space opera fantasy flick. He wrote a 20-page story that he pitched to 20th Century Fox, but at the time it was reported that the studio heads didn't really believe in this project. They just believed in George Lucas. So they gave him a budget of about $150,000, which adjusted for today's time would be about $1.1 million, for him to write and direct Star Wars. But thank God in August, American Graffiti came out. It opened up to crazy success, which by the way made $140 million on a $700,000 budget, which is freaking insane. And this gave George Lucas the power to go back in the studio and renegotiate so he can get the budget to really make his masterpiece. George Lucas locked in. He made a full draft of this story. They even moved the production for this film to a company in England called Elstree Studios just to help with the cost. Just to make the visual effects for this movie, he had to form his own company called Industrial Light and Magic, ILM, which by the way, right now is the world's leading, largest film visual effects company, working on some of the biggest and greatest effect films of all time. However, even though Fox Studios shortchanged this guy and gave him a shorter budget, he still went $3 million over because the movie kept getting delayed. There was difficulties with production, whatever. I wasn't in the 70s, but something bad happened and they had to go $3 million over. And even though nobody had faith in my boy's vision, when it dropped, it made over $410 million in the box office, becoming a complete shock, surprise, smash hit. Adjusted for inflation, the $410 million Star Wars made at the box office at the time makes it the 4th highest grossing film of all time. It even won 7 Academy Awards, including Best Visual Effects. And when you consider the fact that George Lucas had to form a team just to make the VFX for this, it's just freaking crazy. But even though the production company, the cast and crew, and pretty much everyone working on this movie thought it was going to suck and be an absolute flop, my boy George Lucas was cooking, man. He had a vision and he wasn't gonna let anyone stop him. But not only did this film basically change how movies are made, how VFX are made, and just completely changed the game for film, it was also praised critically. Everyone knew they were watching a masterpiece that would change generations. And right away, they gave George Lucas the opportunity to make as many sequels and movies as he wanted, and you know exactly what he did. He turned this movie into a serial. So from that point, they renamed the movie to Star Wars A New Hope Episode 4, re-released it back in theaters, made even more money. And then in 1980, we got The Empire Strikes Back. It was the first time major fans get to see all their heroes and the main characters basically lose and the bad guys win. And then we got Return of the Jedi, and look, man, I'm just gonna say it. The Star Wars original trilogy could be one of the best trilogies ever made, if not the best. Over 15 years later, and then George Lucas decides, I want to make another 3 Star Wars movies, but no, they're not going to be sequels. They're going to be prequels. And you would think when these movies came out, everyone loved them, right? No, everybody freaking hated the prequels when they came out. It was a big disappointment to diehard Star Wars fans, and it flopped really hard critically. Nowadays, no Star Wars fan will admit that to you, and everybody loves those prequels now, especially Revenge of the Sith. It doesn't matter if you never watched Star Wars in your life, you've seen this scene.
You were the chosen one!
Another decade passes by, and now we finally get the sequels to the original Star Wars trilogy. But this time, George Lucas has nothing to do with it. In 1978, he told Time magazine that he outlined prequels and sequels in 1981. However, for whatever reason, after making the prequels, he said, you know what? There is no sequels. I'm throwing those in the garbage. These 6 movies will be the only Star Wars movies I ever make. He felt so strongly about this that Lucas decided to completely leave Star Wars, and he announced officially in January 2012 that he would make no more Star Wars films. And then in October of that same year, he sold Star Wars to Disney for over $4 billion, which also included Indiana Jones and the ILM VFX company, which was honestly a crazy freaking deal. But in 2012, George Lucas also gave the plans that he made to Disney for the sequels, which is insane. We thought he all ripped those up, but no, he had them and he gave them to Disney. But in 2015, again, George Lucas's sequels were discarded and they were not moving forward with them. Now it's December 2015, and after almost 3 decades, we finally got a sequel to the original Star Wars trilogy called The Force Awakens. And maybe you guys forgot how much hype was on this movie, so let me just show you how excited people were for it.
Darth Vader walked the bride down the aisle outside this Hollywood theater.
By the power invested in me by Master Yoda, the Jedi Council, and the state of California, I now pronounce you husband and wife.
And if that wasn't enough for you, let me tell you how much this movie made. Over $2 billion. It's the 6th highest grossing film of all time. And look, a lot of people will probably bash on this movie now and say it sucks, but when it came out, oh my god, everybody loved this movie. It was praised so highly critically, and honestly, it was just a very beautifully shot film with a great story, great new characters, and it seemed like somehow they recaptured that magic George Lucas found in 1970s. And we was all freaking pumped. We thought we were about to get the best new Star Wars movies we've ever seen. But then, something happened.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Look, if you ask me, The Last Jedi should be named The Last Straw, because this is exactly when the magic of Star Wars got completely sucked out. There is so many things story-wise wrong with this movie, and it completely destroyed everything we know and love about the new characters and the old and established characters that everyone has loved for over 50 years. And it definitely doesn't help when Luke Skywalker himself, Mark Hamill, is going on talk shows absolutely trashing this movie, saying it's a disgrace. And guess what? He's right. It is so 100% obvious that Rian Johnson, J.J. Abrams, and all of the writers and creators of this sequel trilogy had absolutely no communication at all. They had no sort of storyline. They didn't know where this series was going. They didn't know what the story was going to be about. They were literally just figuring it out as they went. And even though Disney and Lucasfilms would never admit that, it's so freaking obvious by just watching The Force Awakens to The Last Jedi. My god, 2 totally different films. And it's such a damn shame, man. J.J. Abrams set up this man with a beautiful lob layup, a beautiful assist, and he just took that ball and shoved it right up his butt crack and farted all over it. Anyway, a few years later, J.J. Abrams tried to pick up the disgusting garbage Rian Johnson left behind for him, rip it apart, and piece together some kind of story that makes a nice ending. And I gotta give him credit, he really tried his best, but this movie just freaking sucked. I mean, you really know you messed up when Luke Skywalker himself hates this freaking movie.
Who is this guy? How did the most optimistic, hopeful character in the galaxy turn into this hermit who says it's time for the Jedi to end? I read that and I said, what?
I mean, I hope people are happy. It seems like, because in Hollywood, remember, kids, it's not important if it's of high quality, only if it makes money.
That's not what a Jedi does. I mean, a Jedi is optimistic. A Jedi has tenacity. He never gives up. He doesn't secrete himself on an island, but you'll see.
There's nothing I hate more than a story or a movie with a bad ending. And for a saga that was 50 years in the making, for it to end on such a sad, horrible note like The Rise of Skywalker did, it's just freaking heartbreaking, man. And if you don't believe me, let's just look at the numbers for this film. This movie's budget reportedly was $416 million. And in the box office, it made $1 billion. For a Star Wars sequel finale with 50 years of love and hype, at the very minimum, it should have made at least $2 billion, which The Force Awakens did only a few years before this one came out. But I truly believe The Last Jedi was so bad, and then following it up with such a weak, ending and story like The Rise of the Skywalker was just a freaking nail in the coffin for Star Wars fans. And look, don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of great Star Wars stuff that came out in between all this, like a Rogue One, which was a phenomenal Star Wars movie, and it gave us probably the greatest Darth Vader scene of all time. We even got a standalone Han Solo spin-off movie, which was alright. It kind of sucked. I don't know. It was a forgettable movie. I don't even remember it as I'm talking about it right now. And we got the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, which I think are chef's kiss. But then they ruined all that with season 3, putting Lizzo and Jack Black in it. What the heck happened? How did this show take such a horrible turn? But look, you can call it whatever you want. You can say it's Star Wars fatigue. You could say other properties like Marvel, Harry Potter, and The Lord of the Rings came around and stole some of its magic and hype. But if you ask me, no, I don't think it's any of those things. I think when you take a story and characters that people basically worship their whole life and sell it out to a big soulless corporation, they're obviously not going to take their time and perfect the story and make a masterpiece. They're just going to rush out whatever they can and make as much money as they can. But after they made a movie like The Force Awakens, it seemed like it wasn't going to be that way. We all felt like we were about to get one of the greatest trilogies we ever saw. But The Last Jedi was a freaking punch in the gut, man. It knocked the wind out of us. And I truly believe that ever since this film came out, we all haven't looked at Star Wars the same. But you know what, man? Even though they got a Mandalorian and Grogu movie coming out that honestly looks like another crappy season of Mandalorian, and they got a Star Wars Starfighter movie
starring Ryan Gosling,
directed by Sean Levy, and Rey is getting her own movie called New Jedi Order, another prequel Star Wars movie called Dawn of the Jedi, and a bunch of other new Star Wars content, shows, games, or any other thing Disney could milk for a profit out of this franchise. I believe one of them is gonna bring back that Star Wars magic I once had. And even if it doesn't, I'll never forget the way this movie made me feel in my soul when I first heard this. But anyway, if you're somehow still watching this video and looking at my ugly face with these humongous eyebrows, I just wanted to tell you, I'm giving away a PS5 or the game console of your choice. All you gotta do is hype this video up, take a screenshot of your hype, follow me on Twitter, and then reply to my pinned tweet. And that's it. I'm gonna pick a random winner and go live when I do. So do me a favor, don't like this video. Whatever you do, don't like it. And definitely don't subscribe. Please, I'm gonna ruin your life. Take care. God bless.